Welcome back to the On Track video cast. And today we are talking about body positivity. I'm sure you're all familiar with body negativity. So we are going to be talking about just the opposite, which is body positivity. And to do that today, I have invited in an expert on the subject, Kristin West. She is an award-winning actress, producer, plus-size model, radio show co-host, and writer. Kristin is proudly plus-sized after years of struggling with body issues. Kristin has dedicated part of her life to helping women feel more comfortable in the skin they're in. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Yay! You've worn a lot of different hats you do wear a lot of different hats career-wise.
I do. I have a lot of fun doing it too.
Yeah, I bet. Like, you're a busy lady, I would think.
Yeah, I get pretty scheduled up. It's fun. I co-host a few radio shows. I'm constantly killing people in the horror movies I'm in. It's a fun and full life.
And a diverse one at that. I know you were just telling me that you do a talk show host on YouTube about horror, like interviewing horror people, like film industry people that are in the horror show. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I interview the actors, directors, producers, and casting directors of horror. So I actually recently had on Tony Moran, who was the original Michael Myers in Halloween, and he actually told me the story of how he got the part, which he hadn't told many people before besides his own family.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. What's it called so that my listeners can go check that out?
Sure. It's called Horror Talk with Kristin West. You can find it on IMDb. It's on my YouTube channel, which is Kristin West. You can find it also, the audio version, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and so many other of your favorite podcast outlets.
That's so awesome. We could have an interview just around that. Geez, that would be so interesting to just hear about those conversations that you have with these people. But we're here to talk about body positivity. And can you just tell us, first of all, what does that even mean? Because most women, like I said, they're familiar probably with negative self-body talk, but what's body positivity?
For me, body positivity is loving yourself no matter what's going on in your physical life. Your physicality is only one part of you. It's not all of you. You're more than the body that you're in. And for me, body positivity is about accepting myself in the present for who I am, whether I'm a size 0 or I'm a 5X, no matter what that is, and accepting and forgiving the circumstances that have maybe allowed me to not be the person or the body that I necessarily covet or have been told to covet.
Right. Yeah. And so it wasn't obviously always that easy for you, though, was it, to be positive about your body image? Can you tell us a little about your story of coming to this place?
Yeah, sure. I've always been a big girl. I'm 5'8.5". I wear a size 11 wide shoe. When I was 14 years old, I was 5'6" and wearing a size XL. I've always been big girl. One of my nicknames in school was Big Bird in junior high. So I've always had an awareness that I've been a bigger size. And the people around me, my grandfather was 6 feet tall. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but he had shoulders as big as the dashboard of a small car. My ancestors were Belgian, Dutch, and I was always very aware, even growing up, that I was a little bit bigger than the kids around me. I've always struggled with weight, off and on, over the years. And when I got to college in my young 20s, I was very obsessed with trying to get down my weight. And I actually entered myself in the Miss Texas pageant. And I got myself down from an XL to about a size 6. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life.
Wow.
2 hours a day of exercising, restricted calories. And at that time in my life, I was in a really grieving space. My grandmother had just died about 3 months prior to me starting this. And instead of dealing with the pain of losing her, I was punishing myself. She actually died on my birthday when I was a sophomore in college. So off and on, I have gone on these exercise and diet binges. And when I moved to Hollywood, it got a little worse, because the first thing, oh, you need to lose weight. My neighbors would even tell me that. Oh, you are carrying too much weight. You can never be an actress and be an XL. So there was a bit of a pressure to really lose weight and to be what we call Hollywood thin, which is 2 and 0, which is even thinner than a lot of people can ever achieve. And even dieting and exercise, I could, in massive hours a day and cutting massive amounts of calories, I could never get to Hollywood thin. I would have to have a bone reduction, quite frankly, if I ever got to Hollywood thin.
But you did want, just sorry to interject. Oh, I am getting some feedback on your end. If you do you have your earphones?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. I don't know if I'm the only one that could hear it. It's gone now. So, even though you were getting that pushback, you still obviously you wanted to get into Hollywood. Like that was still a passion of yours, and that you still pursued even with that pushback.
I did, because one of the things is I'm doggedly stubborn, and when I want something, I want something. I was like, well, you know what? I've always played character parts. There's kind of 2 types of roles when you think of film and even theater. There are leading lady and what are called ingenue parts, which you think of the very beautiful, glamorous people doing. And then there are what are called character parts, which people that are not necessarily beautiful or glamorous or thin can play. And I've always been a character part anyway. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to live in the skin I'm in and try and be healthy. So instead of framing my goals around being thinner, I framed my goals around being healthier. And health is not just the body either. It's what's going on up here, whether or not you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or not. I mean, if you're thin and cuckoo, it doesn't help you. So I decided to kind of take a more holistic approach to my own well-being.
Wow, good for you. And probably then when you say holistic, where did you turn? Like, did you actually go get help from somebody, or did you read a book, or did you just come up with that on your own, where it was like, you know what, it's just time that I just try to be healthy rather than lose weight?
For me, it was 2 things. For me, it was definitely an inspiration in myself that I just need to focus on being healthy no matter what. Because the zeitgeist around what a woman's body should look like changes. If we had been in Peter Paul Rubens' time, I would have been hot. Yeah. Like, Venus of Willendorf, hi, that's me. The zeitgeist changes, the spirit of the time changes. And now you see that changing with people like Melissa McCarthy and Ashley Graham and Chrissy Metz. The zeitgeist is changing to reflect what more of women in the U.S. are experiencing. So part of it was just a recognition myself that I needed to be healthier. And I did do some self-work. I did read some books. I did sort of examine some of my more emotional issues around weight, particularly that thing I talked about with my grandmother dying and why all of a sudden I felt like I needed to become rail thin. So I had to do some inner work too to get to the point where no matter what's happening around me, I'm okay with what's going on inside of me.
Because like you said, to get down to the size 6, it was that you were punishing yourself just to get down to a size 6. So you weren't happy doing what you were doing, were you?
Oh no. Oh my gosh. I mean, it literally what would happen when I was in school at the time is I would go to class, I would do my required reading and keep up with all of, the collegiate homework you have to do. I would exercise for 2 hours, and then I would take a 4-hour nap right in the middle of it, smack dab in the middle of the day, and then sleep another 10 hours on top of that. I was exhausted. And I just, my heart goes out to women in the US and abroad who don't understand or don't realize how much images are manufactured. I learned that being my major was in film, radio, TV, film from University of Texas. But there are so many ways that people manufacture images with photoshopping, and the number of makeup artists and hairstylists it takes and stylists it takes to make an image that's in a commercial print ad or a TV commercial. There are several people that go into making these images that we consume constantly. And
wow.
That's out of reach for most women. And particularly if you think about people right now, you think Instagram is an interesting phenomenon. I love Instagram, but people feel like they have to make their life Instagrammable.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to really kind of look at, this is me and this is what I think should be me. And I think what creates pain in a lot of people is when there's a big distance between who I really am and who I think I should be. That gap is what causes the pain in people.
It really is, and I always say to women, how many women do you actually know that has that picture perfect, tiny little body that you see in magazines? And every single woman's like, they're sitting there like really trying to think, who do I know? And I'm like, see, you can't even come up with somebody. Like I can name my niece who's, 20 years old and she's just got some great genetics. I don't know a lot of other women that are just naturally like that. The one I do know of a lot that are working themselves to the bone to look like that.
Right.
But naturally, it's actually not natural for women to look that way. That's like you said, like go back in years, look at Marilyn Monroe, and we were naturally supposed to just have some curves on us. I mean, we're women, we're female, we're supposed to be bearing children, which means we need some fat on our bodies. And today, looking at what I think is normal to mainstream media, that's overweight.
I agree with you. And I think what's interesting, I love that you brought up about bearing children, is that our bodies have not caught up to evolution in the sense that our bodies are still programmed to be hunter-gatherers and being able to live through a famine. And for us to have these exercise routines that are punitive and, you only have 2% fat on your body is not what our genes are programming us for. CDC has actually done studies about this. There are genes that are in place to make sure that we have a fat reserve to overcome famine. Now, that doesn't mean eat everything you want all the time. But here's the thing, too, is that you need to have a certain amount of pleasure in your life to make life worth living. And I feel bad for people who feel dirty and wrong about eating a bowl of ice cream every once in a while.
I know. I always say, enjoy the good ice cream. You should be able to enjoy ice cream and not, balloon up. Like there is this happy place of eating. You don't need to starve. You should never have to starve yourself. That's what I always say. Never have to starve yourself. That's the most ridiculous notion in the entire world. And it's what 95% of diets are telling us is necessary to lose weight is work out more and eat less. And exactly what you said. I love that you talked about the genetic factor because I specialize in ancestral nutrition. And I always tell people our genes have changed very little since we were hunter-gatherers. So every time you go drop your calories more and you're wondering why your weight loss has stalled or why you can't lose weight, I'm like, your body is being, you're signaling to your system that there's nothing around, that we're in a famine. Quick, lower metabolism, hold on to the body weight because there's no food around. Your genes don't know that we've got tons of food at every corner right now, right? And women, I'm
Exactly.
like, that's got to be the worst goddamn advice ever is eat less.
It's true. And I'm glad that you brought the plethora of food because I talked about the Peter Paul Rubens paintings and I talked about the Venus of Willendorf. It was also, there's economic issues with weight. Back in the day, King Henry VIII, there was no problem with him being the most rotund guy in the planet because he was, one of the wealthiest men in the world at his time. Food was intimately interconnected with wealth and the ability to buy or to consume. Now that you fast forward into the postmodern era, it's your idea of wealth is not, because so much food is available to people of varying qualities. The wealth is now signaled by your ability to hire a trainer, your ability to get your cool sculpting or freeze fat, your ability to go to a plastic surgeon, your ability to buy exercise equipment. Thinness is now associated with wealth instead of necessarily being able to find food and buy food. So there's a consumer shift in how we perceive people of a certain weight, which can have really big economic consequences for anybody who's carrying a few extra pounds there, because they're perceived as not necessarily being of a certain economic stature either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I always tell people that our great grandmothers didn't calorie count. They didn't wear a Fitbit. They didn't go on diets. They didn't go to the gym. There was no such thing as calorie counting before like 1970s. There was no obesity rates that were tracked before 1970s because there were less than 4% in North America. So all these little gadgets and things that you're talking about, they aren't a reflection of why you're overweight or not overweight.
It's true. And I'm glad that you brought up, our great-grandmothers. Many of our great-grandmothers wore a girdle. That was a thing, up until probably the early 60s. But, there are so many things to shape a woman's body into what it's supposed to be now. It's kind of mind-boggling, Spanx and stuff like that. Frankly, I don't wear them, mostly because I like being comfortable.
Yeah, me too. I've tried it. They're so horribly uncomfortable.
You can't breathe. And, here's the thing about it is the average woman is 5'4". She's 166 pounds. She's got a BMI of about 28.5. That's 100 million women in the U.S. That are considered to be overweight of 157. So 2/3 of us are considered to be overweight. But what's shocking to me and frustrating to me personally is that if you walk into a department store, Nordstrom's, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, first two floors of the women's section are all miss sizes. You go to the third floor, half of the showroom on the third floor is miss size evening wear, and the other half is plus size clothing, general plus size clothing, the whole mishigash of plus size clothing. But what's astounding is that retailers are leaving money on the table because the majority of women need a size 14W and up. So it's frustrating because when you have all of these messages saying, oh, you're not supposed to be here at this weight, it can really do damage to women. And I finally, for me, I had to realize there were forces larger than me that were commenting on my weight that didn't necessarily reflect on me. And that was a big kind of aha moment for me, is that it's okay for me to be who I am today. And I have to be satisfied with that because nobody else is living my experience of my life, and being healthy for me is my goal, not necessarily losing weight.
Yeah. I just recently was in a women's clothing store, and I was looking at the bikinis for the season. And, the asses are, I'm not shitting you, they were probably this big on the bathing suits. And I'm like, seriously, when is the industry going to catch up? Because majority of us wouldn't be caught dead in something like that. Like, they are marketing to a very small group of women that would actually dare to put something like that on. It's terrible.
Well, it's true. And swimwear in particular can be a really big button for people because you feel so exposed. I remember the first time I put on a bikini when I was in the Miss Texas pageant. I'd never put one on before. And it was the medium bikini, which was large for this group of young ladies. I felt awful. I just didn't feel good in it. And fashion, I actually had this conversation with Dr. Nina Savell Rockland, Tyrone Barrington, and my co-host Judy Goss on What Women Want Talk Radio. Is fashion has a sort of a big crisis moment here, because so many people in the fashion industry are actually experiencing severe pressure, not only to be thin, but to be successful and to appear successful, that models and designers are having epidemic levels of mental health issues.
Wow.
That need to be addressed. And so really, I think fashion is having its kind of come to Jesus moment in terms of what is really healthy. And I'm glad you brought up the mannequins, because the mannequins, clothes, especially high fashion clothes, couture clothes, it's not about the model wearing the clothes or the women who are eventually going to wear the clothes. It's about what how the clothes hang on the person. So when you have a fuller bodied person, the clothes don't hang as well. And so it's not about the women wearing the clothes, it's about the clothes themselves, which is really disheartening. But I'm so glad that there are designers out there like Melissa McCarthy, who finally did her own plus size line to really make clothing that suits a lifestyle of a regular woman, career woman, and letting her be in the body that she's in.
And be fashionable and show off her curves, right? I think women tend to want to hide their bodies if they've got extra weight on them. And really, if we had the right fashion to choose from, women would maybe feel a lot more beautiful in their clothing. And so...
No, it's true.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I was slowing down.
It's okay. It's true, because it's interesting. My manager called me one day and he said, I've had people commenting on you wearing sleeveless dresses on the red carpet. And I said, and at first I was a little scared. I was like, oh. He's like, people love it. Like, women are calling me and telling me that they love it when you wear sleeveless, because it makes them feel more comfortable with themselves. So we really have to embody the world that we want to see.
Yes, absolutely. So what is it like now for you, being in Hollywood, being on the red carpet? How do you go about facing that? Like, you are we were talking about this before we started, but you are at the top of the industry where it's probably absolute worst. I mean, I always say I have it really bad because I'm a nutritionist that specializes in weight loss. So I have a lot to, live up to, basically, right? As far as my body goes. And I feel the pressure for sure. And I've struggled with my own body issues, but I can't imagine being in Hollywood with all of that around you and keeping such a great attitude that you have. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, first thing people need to realize is that the camera is not the same as the human eye. Okay, it is not the same. The camera is a magnification instrument, and it loves tiny, tiny things. The smaller, the better. With bigger things, the camera tends to blow them up. So you remember that you're not seeing what with your own eye, you're seeing through a camera. And I'm going to tell you, I've had hundreds of pictures of myself taken on red carpets, on sets, on just walking down the sidewalk one day. I was out with a friend going to an event, and our picture was just randomly taken. There's a lot of different, for me, I make peace with the fact there's a lot of different factors. Some of the best pictures that have ever come out of me, I felt like crap that day and was on that red carpet anyway. Or I didn't think that dress was going to work. I didn't like the dress as much, and it came out really well. So I'm okay with the fickleness of the image. The image is also being recorded by a person who it may be a bad angle for me, but a great angle for everyone else. I'm really pale. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm fair skinned. Sometimes I'm going to look ultra under bright lights. I'm going to look ultra pale and ultra pasty and ghost-like. So one thing I think people need to embrace is not only that there are things beyond your control. You're going to change from day to day. Where are you in your cycle? Do you look good when you're in your cycle, or do you look bad when you're on your cycle? Did you sleep enough the night before? Is your hair weird because something happened? Did you put too much product in it? You have to have a kind of a self-acceptance that there are things beyond your control and there are things that are within your control, and learning to balance the two. But I've learned never to take an image of myself too seriously because I've been photographed so much. But here's the thing too, is that I know that if I had, 8 people fussing with my hair and fussing with my makeup and dedicated to finding clothes that fit and everything, that image would look great. But not every woman has that opportunity either. So it's an interesting thing you have to really consider, is that the images of you are not you. There's a distance between you, this self here, and what the camera perceives. And in acting itself, we tend to label people. I get the funny friend a lot when we do comedy. I get the killer occasionally when we do horror, or the ghost killer because I'm so pale and it's easy to make me paler. But that's not me. That's just what the camera sees.
So you've really been able, like, a part of your journey has really been accepting the fact that your body isn't who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think that's a very important piece.
It's one of the most important pieces that you can really understand. And we relate to each other through our experiences of our body, hugging people, shaking hands, reading another's face when they're emoting. But there's so much more to the human experience than our bodies. And that's one of the things. Is there's a great saying that you're a human being having a spiritual experience. You are also a human body having a spiritual experience. And I think whether you're Jewish or Catholic or Buddhist or Muslim or whatever you are, I think every person needs to really examine what that means in the context of the faith that they have.
I agree. Yeah. I think it's a very important piece to anybody, for any woman, a man too, but we're specifically talking for women right now, because I think no matter what size women are, I very rarely find a woman that is okay with her body, whether it's 5 pounds that she needs to lose or 100 pounds or whatever. That not too many of us, if, like, I'm talking like maybe a couple percent, where they're actually like, oh, I love everything about my body, it's so great. That to try to understand that you're not your physical self, it's a really great first step into understanding body positivity and kind of setting yourself on a better path, basically, of understanding that you're not your body. And it's something to kind of focus on, because we tend to focus on the flaws.
It's true. I would give 2 pieces of advice for people right now, today, that may be actionable for them. First of all, if you've never read Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, the poem, do it now.
Oh, okay.
Do it today. Do it today. I was introduced to that poem in high school, but the message of it didn't land on me until I was out of college and kind of over my insecurity and issues with having to be thin enough. So it took me a while to kind of take a little journey with that poem. The other thing, and I think because women's images in media are so laced with sexuality, every woman really needs to see the vagina monologues once. It's going to be hard for some people to sit through, but you really need to understand that very taboo part of your body is a very important part of your experience of your body and your experience of womanhood. And appreciating women talking about their body in their own words instead of an advertiser or a man's perspective telling you what your body is. And talking about insecurity, so much of our discourse about weight loss, about fitness, really thrives on our insecurities as women.
Yeah.
Insecurity is a very easy thing to sell. The only thing I think that's easier for people to sell besides insecurity is fear. And insecurity in a lot of weight loss products and diet products and body image products, self-improvement products, they're trying to create an insecurity. It's a very, very cheap, fast, effective sales pitch. And women just have to be savvier consumers and really understand what that pitch is about. That pitch is trying to create an insecurity about your crepey skin. I see these infomercials, I'm like, oh my God, crepe skin. Someone who's never really even thought about their skin as they're aging, you know, now is like, oh my God, I have crepe skin. I have to do something about it. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. So we need to demand of the companies that we do business with as women that they speak to us in more elevated ways. And we do that by the power of our purchasing.
Ah, in what sense?
We don't patronize businesses that sell based on insecurities. You know, like Dove. Dove's a great example. They, you know, the soap company, they finally did love the skin you're in. They finally embraced real women. People should definitely be buying products like that embrace real women. Target has had calls for plus size models in their commercials. If you're seeing a company really play on a woman's insecurity, oh, you need to lose this weight now so that you can find a husband, which is a lot of the underlying tone of many of these weight loss and fitness ads and products you see out there, drop them like it's hot, for gosh sakes.
Thank you for saying that, because I'm on the other side of this industry where I always say I've picked the worst niche to be in or the worst thing to be so passionate about, which is I sell that there is no diet. There's no perfect diet. And that there's so many layers to weight loss. It's not just about the food that you put in your mouth, that there's emotional stuff that you have to deal with that go with it. There's the bombardment and the food addiction that's all around us. Like, there's so many things. And if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, my business, most marketers would be like, oh, this is terrible. You got to narrow it down. You got to scare the shit out of them. You got to make them feel like shit. Then you sell them this one product that's going to fix all their problems. And I'm like, sorry, but there's going to be more to it than this.
No, see, women, I think, are embracing more and more that our lives are more complicated and more nuanced. And I think we are starting to demand more of the businesses and demand more of products, and also creating communities around those products and not allowing women to be bullied because of their size or their shape. And here's the thing about it, and this is what really ticks me off about fear-based and insecurity-based advertising being directed at women, talking about women's lives being complicated. Every woman is different, but we have similar struggles and things that we go to. You know, every 90 seconds, a woman is sexually assaulted in the U.S. That is a fact. Women are raising children, and sometimes, you know, there are economic issues. I mean, the Great Recession, at the height of the Great Recession, 1 out of 4 children in this country went hungry. There was food scarcity. That's gone down 1 out of 6. That's still very high. But there's still, many women are still having tremendous economic pressure, and there's the day-to-day realities of being a woman that are different from being a man in this society, the pay gap, for instance, that men don't experience. And for companies just to bombard women with more insecurity and more fear doesn't uplift women. And it's my hope that we can get past this sort of narrative of, if you don't lose weight, you're not going to have a husband, or you're not going to be the perfect mom, or you're not going to be the perfect. And I even see it with grandparents too, grandmothers. If you don't lose weight, you're not going to be the perfect grandma.
Oh,
I mean,
Jesus.
women live through enough, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, we all hope that by the time we're a grandma, we're going to just be able to let all this shit go finally. It's just,
Right.
right? No, I'm really glad that you say that, because I always point out that we do have it tougher as women. You know, yes, we've come a long ways as far as women's rights, but we've almost shot ourselves in the foot in so many ways that, you know, now we not only are doing just as much work as a man does as far as job goes, but we're also the main caregiver of the children. We're also the main person that's cooking and cleaning and caretaking everybody in the household. And we've got all these jobs. And then we're also being told, you got to work out, by the way,
Right.
5 days a week. And you got to make sure that you have time to eat and cook nutritious meals that are organic and healthy. And you need to do this. And it's like, really, come on. Like, there's so many layers to this, social layers to this.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that women have to really take stock of and be really brutally honest about themselves. We don't talk about some of these issues as much as we should, but you know, if you're a single mom, those problems are even compounded even further. You may be working, you know, you may have a side hustle or a second job, and then you're supposed to do, you know, you're supposed to hold a plank for 10 minutes while the kids are screaming, and all they want to eat is macaroni and cheese. I mean, you really have to be honest about the circumstances you are in the present. Many people live aspirationally, and I understand that. I've lived my life according to what I've aspired to be, but you really have to understand who you are now today before you can kind of reach for those aspirations, no matter whether it's to be healthier, hopefully not just thinner, but healthier, richer, more at peace, whatever those goals are. But you really have to be grounded in the present and who you are in the moment.
Yeah. How much do you think that actually impacts the success of somebody going on that kind of a journey if they're wanting to lose weight or get healthier? That the self-acceptance piece should come first, I would say.
Absolutely. It must come first. So many people are either looking ahead or they're looking behind. You know, it was great when I was 20 and I was in college and, you know, I could exercise 3 hours a day, you know, or, you know, my life would only be better if. You're not guaranteed tomorrow and you can't fix the past. So you have to do what you can do today. And no matter, you know, if you can only walk a half a mile today, walk that half a mile and then see if you can take some extra steps the next day. You know, it's one of those things where if you have I had a friend break an arm and he really was ticked off about that. And instead of just kind of moping over, well, if I hadn't broken my arm, I could do this, this, and this. I mean, he really went through the physical therapy process and despite odds got 90% of his range of motion back on his arm. It was astounding. But it was because he was present to himself in that day instead of bemoaning the fact that he fell and broke his arm. Or instead of saying, well, when my arm gets better, I'll be able to do this, this, and this. He just focused on the arm.
Yeah, I think that we tend to think life is going to be so much better
Right.
when we're X amount of weight or we're this or we're that or we have this or that. And we're always looking ahead, or like you said, in the back where it's like, if I could go back to how I was when I was 20, or I have women all the time, they're like, well, one time I was 130 pounds. And I'm like, and how miserable were you? And, oh, well, it was pretty awful. Yeah. You know, and then they admit, yeah, no, that was terrible. And it's like, it's guaranteed you're going to get there and you're not going to be satisfied because you haven't dealt with the right now being satisfied.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was pageant sized, I was frantic. I mean, it was my sole focus. There was no room in my life for anything else. Nothing.
Yeah. I always say, what's your life like without that struggle? Like, what does it look like? Start doing that now. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way to go about it, is live your life now. Don't think that you're going to live this better life just because you've lost all this weight. For sure, maybe you'll be able to do more things, or you can be more active, but don't stop living now. It's better to just accept where you're at. And that journey is going to be so much easier if only we could just get that through our heads.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest struggles, is that there's no perfect weight. There just isn't.
No.
But there is a weight that your body is comfortable and functional in that will evolve over time.
Yes, agreed. Yes. I remember getting to a point finally, which I'll tell you my own journey, because you were kind of talking about the single motherhood and the running around. And that was me. And this was like 10 years ago. And I was the single mom, had a lot of stress in my life, and was working out like crazy and I've always been a nutritious person. And I kept gaining and gaining and gaining. I was at the heaviest I'd ever been. And I was like, what is going on? And that pressure was so much on me. I mean, I had to figure out a bunch of stuff to come around to this, but there is that social and economic pressure on women that needs to change in that sense, right? But yeah, I know I lost my train of thought there, where I was going, but yes, I just think that if we could, so what I was going to say, I remember when I got on the train of losing the weight and getting to this place where I'm at now, where I was kind of like, well, I still got this, big tummy flap going on, and I've got, this, and I've got that, and I could still point out, I got cellulite on my thighs, and I still don't like wearing a bikini, but I'm not willing to do what it would take for me to get down smaller, because like you said, everybody's got a place where their body does actually, it likes, and it plateaus. Yeah. And it really likes being at certain places. There's fat mass set points. There's just your body, and it's used to being at a certain place. And it's very hard to get past that without being in complete misery and starvation.
Right. And who wants misery and starvation? And I think one of the things I had to really embrace was that my health and well-being is as complicated as I am as a person. There's no magic bullet. There's no miracle shake. There's no miracle supplement. There's no standard workout routine. It's as complex as I am as a person. When people really embrace their complexity a little bit more, then they're not going to seek simple solutions to really complex problems. I mean, even the CDC says that the issue of obesity is what's called multifactorial. There are many reasons why people carry extra weight. It's not just because you like eating potato chips. It's your genes, it's your environment, it's your stress level. If your cortisol level is through the roof, you're not going to shed that weight. You're just not. So it's multifactorial, and it's as complex as you are in the life that you've created for yourself.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of putting together all the little puzzle pieces, as I say, finding out your little puzzle and putting them all together. And sometimes that takes a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, and but I think the best starting place is that the body positivity.
I agree, because you have to love yourself. I try and tell myself, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Even though there are things I wish I could change, I wish I could do over, redo, adjust. If I don't have that, if I walk through my life going, oh, I can't stand myself, I hate when I do that, I hate that I ate that, I hate that I said that, life just isn't what it should be. And I think that's what women really need to embrace, is that there's so many, like I said, with the insecurity, there's so many things telling you that something about you needs to be changed. And yes, we all need to make changes and improvements, but you really have to come from a deep place of compassion for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. Well, thank you. And where can we find you? Kristin, is it Kristin, your blog? Because you do have a blog.
I do have a blog. You can find me on KristinWest.net, KristinWest. westlikeTheDirection.net. You can find me on Twitter at the Kristin West and on Facebook at host Kristin West or at Kristin West actress.
You're just all over the place.
I'm everywhere. And on Instagram, the Kristin West. If you want to see the Instagramification of my life, yes, it's a little filtered, not highly filtered, but just a little filtered, then you can find me on Instagram as well.
And you look gorgeous on all your pictures, because I was looking at your site and your little pictures and stuff before doing this interview. And I thought, oh, geez, she's so photogenic. It's no wonder that you're in Hollywood, because you do look the part and you look gorgeous in your photos. And even though that's not really who you are, it's like you said.
Well, I know some great photographers.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's been an interesting journey for me to really appreciate the gifts I've been given. And I want every woman to feel that way. This is why I talk about body positivity so much, because for too many years, whether I was 140 pounds or 180 pounds, I just didn't like the way I looked, and I got tired of it. And I decided I wanted to like the way I looked.
Oh, I love that. And I really appreciate that you speak out about it, that you speak out about what you went through and how you are now, how you deal with going into Hollywood about this and wanting to make this impact on a multi-level place for women, because that's where we have to hit it from all of these angles that we're talking about today.
Exactly. And thank you for having this discussion, because a lot of people in fitness and diet probably wouldn't necessarily invite this discussion. So I appreciate you for having the open mind, and not only the open mind, but the open heart to really discuss these things in a real and genuine way.
Well, I think it's up to us to blaze the trails, you
exactly.
and I. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on and speaking.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you very much.
Okay.